Throughout my 6 years of teaching at the one-roomed primary school at the end of the valley, every morning had been the same. I'd wake up precisely at 5 o'clock and ride my bicycle for 20 minutes until I reached the school. Once inside, I'd light the fire so that the children could warm themselves when they arrived. They'd often be wet and lifeless after walking miles from the surrounding area. This particular day saw no exception to my routine. However, as I arrived, I noticed an orange flicker in the left-hand window of the building. As I stepped inside, I felt the heat and saw that the fire had already been lit. Strange, I pronounced, but I didn't let my imagination wander. I must not have killed the flame before I left yesterday, I thought. It was still dark outside, as it was November. No form of light was offered through the windows. Therefore, I relied on the glow of the fire and the few candles that I was setting about the room. Not long had I arrived when 3 knocks disturbed me from my reading. I put down my book and focused on the door for a while. I rose to my feet. Another 3 knocks momentarily startled me, but I walked to the door. Upon opening the door, I found no one on the other side. It was still dim out there, so I couldn't see if it was somebody walking down the road that had foolishly decided to frighten me. I shut and locked the door after this, in order to keep out the cold. I'd been sat with my feet by the fire, undisturbed for at least 30 minutes before another set of knocks grabbed my attention. I rose once again from my chair in hope of this time seeing who it was that insisted on banging so loudly. However, I did not make it to the door. Instead, I found myself stood looking towards the window, for I was sure I saw a shadow pass over it. Of course it could have been mine, but surely, with the fire behind me, my shadow would have been twice the height. This black figure seemed to be, at most, 4 foot tall. There it was again by the other window. It was only a faint creature, blurry but distinguishable. I watched, perplexed as it appeared to shuffle across the room. It seemed deformed in some way, its action resembling a limp. When it reached the door, I thought my eyes were deceiving me. The black haze grew an arm-like extension on its left side, and, with this, it quickly knocked 3 times on the door. I let out an uncontrollable shriek, and as I did, the dark shape dissolved into the wood of the door. "Calm down," I whispered. "Think rationally," I ordered myself. The knocks came again, this time softer. I half expected to be greeted by the ghastly shadow, or like the first time, nobody. To my surprise, when I opened the door, it was to Henry Nansen, a boy that frequently attended school. I noticed his shoes, soaked. "Good morning, Henry. You're here early." "I'm cold," he said, wrapping his arms around himself. "Come inside. The fire's lit." "I know. I was cold," he said, walking towards the fire and taking a seat. Henry must have lit the fire before I had arrived. "How did you get inside?" I asked. "I'm cold," he said, completely disregarding my question. I was confused, firstly, as to why he did not give me an answer, but also as to why he repeated his statement from before, even as he was sat in front of the fire. "Where were you when I arrived?" "I went to see if there were any flowers by the river." We sat and talked for another hour. The sun was now rising, which made it easier to see Henry, and also stopped any shadows being cast onto the walls. Henry looked awfully pale. His lips had a blue tint to them, and he mentioned his low temperature many times during our conversation. Another knock at the door cast my mind back to the events that I had experienced just a few hours ago, but the bright morning gave me strength to confidently answer the door. The rest of my pupils were stood outside waiting to come in. I collected their small payment as they entered. At the end of the line was Mrs. Nansen, Henry's mother. Her grave expression intrigued me. I greeted her, and without missing a beat, she took her turn to speak. "Henry won't be returning to school. We found him early this morning in the river. He froze to death." My head snapped back to the fire where Henry was sitting. Henry was not there.